Blood pooled around Philip Perry's crushed leg, razor shards of titanium alloy hull pierced his abdomen, and searing plasma burns lacerated his scorched flesh. But somehow, the terrifying human survived the spacecraft's brutal impact on Pryloria. As he clawed his way out of the smoldering, twisted wreckage that was once an F-17 Starhawk, he scanned the alien landscape of barren rock and venomous vapor-spewing cracks. Philip tapped his emergency distress beacon, praying that any humans left in the Thylaxia star cluster could rescue him before the locals on this rocky hellscape finished him off. His plasma rifle lay somewhere in the debris, its indicator light pulsing a fading amber glow through the smoke. Thundering footsteps shook the slate-grey gravel around the crash site. 12 monstrous silhouettes, each nearly 8 feet tall, blocked out the harsh light of Pryloria's twin blue suns. Altair and his Prylorian hunting party aimed their electro-spears at Philip's head. The creature's segmented iridescent purple carapaces and massive crystalline compound eyes glittered menacingly. Disoriented from his wounds and dazed by the hunter's sudden appearance, Philip tried to stand but screamed out as white-hot agony seared through his crushed leg. He raised his shaking, blood-stained hands in submission, hoping the Prylorians would realize his intentions were peaceful. Altair clicked his spiny mouthparts together, signaling for his hunting party to bind the human's arms and carry him back to their underground city, Zothex. Dragging the human roughly across the cracked, uneven ground, the Prylorians chattered excitedly about the bizarre alien that had fallen from the sky into their most hallowed grounds. Philip could only grimace through the pain, imagining the interrogation and torture that likely awaited him. He could endure that and more, though. He had to survive this. He was Earth's last hope against the Krev Empire's galactic domination. Philip's encoded message, their coordinates and plans, all of it had to reach the human resistance. If the Prylorians couldn't help him escape this radioactive rock, Philip would find another way. He'd stop the Krev or die trying, no matter how many blistering wastelands or bloodthirsty aliens stood in his way. The Prylorians dragged Philip through the strange, angular streets of their alien city. His crushed leg throbbed, and his head swam from blood loss. Twisting organic skyscrapers of purple crystal and pulsing biotechnology loomed overhead, connected by a chaotic web of energy conduits. Insectoid hovercrafts whizzed by on glowing plasma lanes high above. Crowds of Prylorians in shimmering exoskeletons filled the streets, bartering at bioluminescent market stalls or scuttling into gelatinous dwellings. Altair's hunters parted the masses, who gawked and clicked at the sight of the battered human prisoner. They dragged Philip up a massive set of biomechanical stairs into an imposing palace of dark metal and chitin. Inside a vaulted foyer of pulsing circuits, a circle of ancient Prylorian elders scrutinized Philip. Their carapaces were cracked and faded, compound eyes milky with age. "Who are you, creature? What brings you to our sacred lands?" A spindly elder croaked through a crackling universal translator. Philip coughed, his split lip oozing blood. "I'm a human from Earth. My ship crashed here by accident. I need to warn my people." "You desecrated our holy grounds, alien," another elder hissed. "The punishment is death." Philip held up his mangled hands. "Please, I mean no harm. I just need to contact my fleet." The elders conferred in rapid clicks and chirps. Finally, the head elder turned to Philip. "Your words mean nothing, soft skin. You will face trial by combat, so that your true nature may be revealed. Should you prevail against our greatest warriors, we may consider aiding your return. Until then, you will suffer for your trespass." 2 hulking guards seized Philip and hauled him towards a dark doorway. His heart hammered in his chest. He was in no condition to fight. But he had to stay alive, had to complete his mission. The Krev had to be stopped. He would find a way to survive this and escape this hellish planet. He had to. The galaxy depended on it. The Prylorian guards marched Philip through the twisting city streets towards the looming arena structure on the horizon. Its high walls and circular shape reminded Philip of the ancient Roman Colosseum back on Earth, but constructed with the Prylorians' strange fusion of organic and metallic architecture. A roaring crowd of chittering insectoids filled the arena's stands, their faceted eyes glinting with excitement in the twin suns' glare. The guards shoved Philip into the sandy pit at the arena's center. His injured leg buckled, and he collapsed to one knee, gritting his teeth against the searing pain. A Prilorian with ornate markings on its carapace scuttled forward and thrust a spear-like weapon into Philip's hands. The metal haft was cool and smooth, and a blade of shimmering green energy crackled to life at its tip. "Your trial begins now, human," the Prilorian hissed through its translator. "Prove your worth or die." Across the area, a massive gate ground open, revealing a hulking Prilorian warrior. Segmented purple armor plates bristled with hooked barbs and gleaming spikes. Its tail, thick as a tree trunk and tipped with a wickedly sharp stinger, lashed back and forth. Razor-edged talons gouged furrows in the sand as it lumbered forward, crystal eyes fixed hungrily on Philip. Still light-headed from blood loss and barely able to stand, Philip raised his energy spear in a feeble guard. The Prilorian warrior lunged, moving with terrifying speed for its size. Philip threw himself sideways, rolling under the slashing claws. Searing pain shot through his abdomen. As the movement tore at his wounds, he scrambled to his feet, favoring his good leg. The warrior spun and charged again, its powerful legs churning up clouds of dust. Philip ducked and dodged, staying just ahead of the warrior's blows. Each near miss sent numbing vibrations up his arms as its strikes clashed against his spear haft. Philip knew he couldn't keep this up for long. His battered body was failing, his movements slowing. The warrior reared up, lashing out with its stinger. The segmented tail hurtled toward Philip's head. He raised his spear in both hands, barely catching the stinger's point on the haft. The force of the blow drove him back, his feet skidding in the loose sand. The warrior pressed forward, claws extended, trying to gut him. Philip's back slammed into the area wall, the breath leaving his lungs in a pained gasp. The warrior loomed over him, its bulk blotting out the suns. As it lunged in for the kill, Philip spotted a small gap in its armored plates, right at the base of its neck. A desperate plan formed in his mind. Philip dropped into a crouch and rolled between the warrior's legs. Taken by surprise, it stumbled and wheeled around. Ignoring the white-hot agony of his injuries, Philip leaped onto the warrior's back, jamming his spear's energy blade into the chink in its carapace. The warrior screeched and thrashed, trying to throw him off, but Philip held on, driving the spear deeper. With a sickening crunch and hiss, the spear point found the warrior's central nervous cluster. The behemoth shuddered and collapsed, its limbs spasming. Philip rolled clear, coming to his feet as the Prilorian crowd fell silent in disbelief. "Well fought, human," Altair clicked, entering the arena with the Council of Elders. "You have proven your strength. The Elders have decided to spare your life." Philip leaned heavily on his spear, his vision swimming. I don't understand. What now?" "Now you will have a chance to demonstrate your worth to our people," Altair said. "Strange disappearances have been reported on our borders. You will accompany me to investigate and face whatever dangers we find." Philip's head swam. He was in no condition for another mission, but what choice did he have? If he was to have any chance of contacting the Resistance, he needed the Prilorians' cooperation. He met Altair's unreadable gaze and nodded. "I understand. I'll do whatever I can to help." As the Prilorian guards led him out of the arena to tend to his wounds, Philip couldn't shake a sense of unease. He was trapped on an alien world, surrounded by dangers he couldn't begin to imagine, and now he was being sent to face even more unknown threats, alongside an inscrutable alien warrior who may yet be an enemy. But he had to stay alive and find a way to complete his mission. No matter the risks, no matter the odds, he had to prevail. After the grueling trial by combat, Philip's wounds were tended to by Prilorian healers. They used strange gels and pulsing energy fields to knit his flesh and mend his bones at an astounding rate. Within hours, he was back on his feet, sore and exhausted, but alive and able to move. Altair led Philip to the edge of the city, where a sleek insectoid vehicle awaited them. It hovered silently on glowing anti-grav pads, its carapace gleaming a deep, iridescent purple. "We'll take the skimmer," Altair clicked, gesturing to the vehicle. "It's the fastest way to cover ground out in the wastes." Philip climbed aboard, settling into a seat that seemed to mold itself to his body. Altair took the controls, and with a thrumming surge of power, the skimmer leapt forward, skimming over the rocky terrain at breakneck speed. For hours they raced through the barren wilderness under the glaring light of Pryloria's twin suns. The landscape was a harsh, unforgiving expanse of jagged peaks, yawning chasms, and windswept plains of rust-colored sand. Philip found himself marveling at Altair's skill in navigating the treacherous terrain, guiding the skimmer through narrow passes and over dizzying drops with ease. As the suns began to set, painting the sky in lurid shades of orange and red, they came upon the remains of a Prylorian settlement. The buildings were strange, organic structures that seemed to have grown from the very bedrock, their walls pitted and scarred. An eerie silence hung over the abandoned village. Altair set the skimmer down at the settlement's edge. As they disembarked, Philip noticed a faint, pulsing glow emanating from the ground, casting twisted shadows across the empty streets. Strange, jagged claw marks scored the walls of the buildings, still smoking at the edges as if seared by some intense heat. "I don't like this," Altair hissed, his compound eyes darting back and forth. "These marks, this energy, it's like nothing I've seen before." Philip moved closer to examine the claw marks. The gouges were deep and precise, far too regular to be natural. What could have done this? Altair's mandibles clicked nervously. There are ancient stories, tales of a predatory species that once stalked the farthest reaches of Pryloria. We called them the Vorax, but they've been extinct for eons. A chill ran up Philip's spine. The pulsing energy from the ground seemed to be growing stronger, making his hair stand on end. "Maybe not as extinct as you thought. We need to find out what happened here." Altair nodded, unslinging his plasma rifle. "Agreed, but we must be cautious. If the Vorax have returned, they will be unlike any foe you've faced." They set out into the abandoned settlement, following the eerie, pulsating energy to its source. As they walked, picking their way through the debris of shattered buildings and strange, twisted technology, Philip found himself reflecting on the unexpected turn his mission had taken. Here he was, an injured human soldier, working alongside an alien warrior to unravel a mystery on a hostile, distant world. "I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this," he said, breaking the tense silence. "Stranded on an alien planet, trying to stop a galactic war." Altair clicked his mandibles in what might have been a chuckle. "Nor did I ever expect to be working with a human. Life has a way of leading us down unexpected paths." Philip glanced at the towering Prylorian, curious. "How did you end up as a border guard, if you don't mind me asking? You seem like you were meant for more than patrolling the wastes." Altair was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. "I was once a commander in the Prylorian military. I led our armies in many victories, but then I was given an order I could not follow. An order to massacre a helpless village, one that had done nothing wrong. I refused, and for my cowardice, I was stripped of my rank and banished to the borders." Philip nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You chose your principles over blind obedience. That's not cowardice, that's courage." "Perhaps, but it cost me everything. My status, my family, my purpose." Altair trailed off, lost in bitter memories. "I know something of loss myself," Philip said quietly. "My unit, my friends, they were all killed in a Creve ambush. I'm the only one left." Altair placed a clawed hand on Philip's shoulder, a gesture of empathy that transcended species. "Then we are both soldiers without an army, warriors without a war. Perhaps this is why our paths have crossed, human." Philip met Altair's gaze, seeing in those compound eyes a kindred spirit, a being who understood the weight of duty and the pain of loss. He opened his mouth to reply, but his words were drowned out by a sudden, piercing shriek that echoed across the empty settlement. A flurry of movement erupted from the shadows as sleek biomechanical forms lunged towards them with blinding speed. Vorax hunters, their carapaces glinting with a metallic sheen, their razor-sharp claws extended. Altair reacted instantly, his plasma rifle spitting searing bolts of energy at the attackers. The air filled with the stench of burning chitin and ozone. Philip drew his own sidearm, a salvaged Prilorian energy pistol, and opened fire, the unfamiliar weapon bucking in his grip. The Vorax moved with terrifying agility, bounding off walls and scuttling across the ground, their movements a blur of slashing claws and whipping tails. One of the hunters leapt at Philip, its claws raking across his chest plate, scoring deep gouges in the metal. Philip staggered back, firing wildly. In the chaos of the ambush, Philip lost sight of Altair. Vorax pressed in from all sides, their shrieks and hisses filling the air. Philip fought with every ounce of his strength and skill, but he was hopelessly outnumbered. A searing pain lanced through his leg as a Vorax claw found a gap in his armor. Philip stumbled, his pistol clattering from his grip. The hunters closed in, their eyes glinting with predatory hunger. Philip scrabbled backwards, his fingers searching desperately for a weapon, anything to defend himself. His hand closed around a jagged shard of metal, a piece of debris from the ruined buildings. The nearest Vorax lunged, its jaws gaping wide. Philip surged to meet it, driving the makeshift blade into its throat with all his strength. The creature convulsed, hot, viscous blood spraying across Philip's face. But there were too many. They just kept coming, an endless tide of slashing claws and gnashing teeth. Philip fought like a man possessed, but he was driven back step by step, until he found himself pressed against a sheer rock wall, nowhere left to run. As the Vorax closed in for the kill, their shrieks rising to a deafening crescendo, Philip gritted his teeth and raised his fists, prepared to go down fighting. He would die as he had lived, a soldier to the last. The Vorax tensed, ready to spring. Philip braced himself for the end, but it never came. A barrage of plasma fire suddenly rained down on the Vorax from above, blasting them into smoldering pieces. Altair stood atop a nearby ridge, his rifle smoking, his carapace splattered with dark Vorax blood. Philip nodded, exhaustion and pain crashing over him in waves. He staggered to his feet, leaning heavily on Altair, as the Prilorian helped him limp towards the skimmer. They sped away from the settlement, leaving the horrors of the ambush behind. But Philip knew this was only the beginning. The Vorax were back, and they had a mystery to solve if they were to have any hope of stopping them. As he slumped in his seat, battered and bloody, Philip couldn't help but feel a flicker of grim determination. He had survived the crash, the trial by combat, and now this. He was still alive, still fighting, and with Altair by his side, he just might have a chance of completing his mission and saving the galaxy. Philip darted behind a crumbling wall, plasma bolts sizzling past his head. His breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles screaming with exhaustion. The Vorax hunters scuttled after him, their shrieks echoing through the ruins. Suddenly a clawed hand grasped Philip's shoulder. He whirled, fist raised, but it was Altair, his carapace scratched and scorched. "This way," Altair hissed, pulling Philip into a narrow crevice. They squeezed through, the rock scraping against Philip's armor. The passage opened into a dark, yawning tunnel, the walls pulsing with eerie bioluminescence. Altair tapped a glowing glyph on his gauntlet, and a hollow map flickered to life. "Those tunnels lead deep beneath the surface," he said, tracing a path with a clawed finger. "If the Vorax have a lair, it will be down there." Philip nodded, checking the charge on his energy pistol. "Lead the way." They crept through the winding passages, the air growing thick and humid. Strange organic pipes and conduits snaked along the walls, pulsing with a sickly light. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, the ceiling lost in shadows. Rows of pulsating cocoons lined the walls, each one easily twice Philip's height. Altair approached one, wiping away a layer of translucent slime. He recoiled with a hiss. Inside was a Prilorian, its carapace warped and twisted. Fleshy tendrils burrowed into its body, slowly absorbing it. Philip felt bile rise in his throat. A deep, resonant hum filled the chamber, and a massive shape unfolded from the shadows. It was a Vorax, but unlike any Philip had seen. It towered over them, its carapace a shimmering black, its eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. "The Queen!" Altair hissed, raising his rifle. A voice echoed in Philip's mind, a cascade of images and sensations. He saw the Vorax infiltrating Prilorian society, assimilating their prey over generations. He felt their hunger, their need to evolve. And he saw their plan. The Vorax had studied him, analyzed his genetic code. In him, they saw the key to their ascension. The Queen would absorb him, use his DNA to create a new breed of Vorax, a hybrid swarm that would consume the galaxy. Philip screamed, clutching his head. Altair fired, but his plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against the Queen's shimmering barrier. Vorax drones poured into the chamber, their claws extended. Philip and Altair fought back-to-back, energy weapons flashing, but it was hopeless. The Vorax quickly overwhelmed them, bearing them to the ground. The Queen loomed over Philip, her thoughts invading his mind. Images of worlds consumed, of the Vorax swarm spreading like a plague across the stars. "No," Philip gritted out, struggling against the drones holding him. "I won't let you—" But the Queen just laughed, a sound like shattering glass. Tendrils extended from her abdomen, writhing towards Philip's face. Altair roared, lashing out with the last of his strength. His claws ripped through the drones holding Philip, and he dragged the human back, energy blasts peppering his carapace. "We have to warn Pryloria," Altair gasped, limping towards a narrow side tunnel. "We have to stop the invasion." Philip half ran, half stumbled after him, the shrieks of the Vorax pursuit echoing behind them. His mind raced, despair clutching at his heart. The Vorax were too strong, their plan too far advanced. What chance did they have against such a relentless foe? But as he looked at Altair, at the grim determination in the Prilorian's eyes, Philip felt a flicker of hope. They had uncovered the truth, no matter how horrifying, and they would fight to their last breath to stop it. They burst out of the tunnels into the harsh light of Priloria's twin suns, the barren landscape stretching before them. In the distance, the spires of the Prilorian city glinted. Philip turned to Altair, his jaw set. "We need to get to your leaders, warn them what's coming." Altair nodded, his mandibles clicking. "And then we fight, for Pryloria, for your Earth, for every world the Vorax threaten." They set off across the unforgiving terrain, the weight of their discovery heavy on their shoulders. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and they were on the front lines. Come what may, they would meet it head-on, together. Philip and Altair strained against their bonds, the fleshy tendrils cutting into their skin. The Vorax Queen loomed over them, her mandibles clacking in anticipation. Philip's mind raced, searching for a way out. He noticed a glowing control panel on the wall, its symbols pulsing with a sickly light. He nudged Altair, nodding towards the panel. "If we can reach that, we might be able to disrupt the Queen's control over the drones," he whispered. Altair's compound eyes narrowed. "Leave it to me." With a burst of strength, Altair ripped one arm free, his carapace tearing. He lunged for the panel, his claws skittering across the controls. The Queen screeched in rage, but it was too late. The tendrils holding Philip and Altair went slack as the Queen's control was severed. They sprang to their feet, snatching up fallen Vorax weapons. The biomechanical rifles hummed with power, their barrels glowing with an eerie light. "We need to get out of here now," Philip said, checking the weapon's charge. Altair nodded, already moving towards the chamber's exit. They burst into the tunnel beyond, the walls pulsing with organic light. Almost immediately, a swarm of Vorax drones descended on them, their claws extended. Philip and Altair opened fire, the air filling with the stench of burning chitin. The drones kept coming, scuttling along the walls and ceiling, their movements a blur of slashing talons. Philip's soldier instincts kicked in. He scanned the tunnel, looking for weaknesses in the structure. The walls were a mix of organic matter and technology, with glowing conduits running along the ceiling. "Altair, target those conduits," he shouted over the din of battle. "If we can overload them, we might be able to bring the whole tunnel down." Altair grunted in acknowledgement, his rifle spitting searing bolts of energy. The conduits exploded in showers of sparks, the tunnel shaking with each blast. Philip covered him, his own weapon flaring as he cut down drone after drone. But for every one they killed, two more seemed to take its place. They were being overwhelmed. "We need to move," Philip yelled. "Plant charges as we go. We'll bring the whole damn lair down on their heads." They fought their way down the tunnel, pausing to slap glowing charges on the pulsating walls. The drones pressed in from all sides, their shrieks echoing in the confined space. Just as they reached a massive, reinforced door, a thunderous roar shook the tunnel. The door exploded outward, and a massive Vorax Guardian emerged, its armored carapace bristling with spikes. Philip and Altair poured fire into the Guardian, but their shots ricocheted off its thick armor. It lumbered forward, its claws gouging deep furrows in the tunnel floor. Philip's mind raced, looking for a way past the behemoth. He spotted a narrow side tunnel, its walls cracked and unstable. "Altair, I'll lure it into that tunnel. You set off the charges as soon as we're clear." Altair hissed in acknowledgement, already moving to the charges. Philip sprinted towards the side tunnel, firing wildly at the Guardian. "Come on, you ugly bastard," he roared. "Come and get me!" The Guardian rumbled after him, its bulk scraping against the narrow walls. Philip ducked and weaved, staying just ahead of its grasping claws. He burst into the side tunnel, the Guardian hot on his heels. The walls groaned and shifted around them, the tunnel barely able to contain the Guardian's mass. Philip reached the end of the tunnel and whirled, firing point-blank into the Guardian's face. The shots shattered one of its compound eyes, and it reeled back, screeching in pain. "Now, Altair, now!" Philip screamed into his comm. A series of deafening explosions rocked the lair, the tunnel collapsing in a cascade of rubble and debris. Philip threw himself forward, barely avoiding being crushed as the Guardian was buried behind him. He staggered out of the side tunnel, coughing in the dust-choked air. Altair was there, his carapace cracked and leaking ichor, but alive. The lair was coming down around them, massive chunks of the ceiling smashing into the floor. They ran, leaping over debris and dodging falling rubble. The Vorax drones were in disarray, crushed by the collapsing tunnels or buried under the wreckage. With a final, desperate leap, Philip and Altair burst out of the lair's entrance, tumbling onto the rocky ground outside. They lay there, gasping for breath, as the lair collapsed behind them in a plume of dust and debris. Philip staggered to his feet, wincing at the pain lancing through his battered body. Altair rose beside him, his damaged carapace sparking. They looked around, taking in their surroundings. The barren, rocky wasteland stretched out before them, the twin suns glaring down from the sky. There was no sign of the Prilorian city, no indication of which way to go. "We did it," Philip said, his voice ragged. "We brought down the lair." "But we're stranded out here," Altair clicked, his mandibles twitching. "No way to contact the city, no resources." Philip's jaw tightened. They were alive, but their ordeal was far from over. The Vorax were still out there, and they had to find a way to warn Priloria about the impending invasion. "Then we better start walking," Philip said, shouldering his rifle. "We've got a long way to go and a lot of work to do." Altair nodded, his compound eyes glinting with determination. Together the human and the Prilorian set off across the unforgiving wilderness, united by their shared purpose and the bond forged in the crucible of battle. The fight against the Vorax had only just begun, and Philip and Altair would be at the forefront, no matter the cost. Philip and Altair trudged across the barren, rocky landscape, the twin suns beating down on their battered bodies. Days had passed since their narrow escape from the collapsing Vorax lair, and their supplies were running dangerously low. Just as despair began to set in, they crested a ridge and spotted a cluster of structures in the distance. "An outpost," Altair clicked, his compound eyes widening. "It bears Prilorian markings, but I see no signs of activity." As they approached, it became clear the outpost was abandoned. The buildings were dark and silent, their organic architecture showing signs of neglect. Philip and Altair entered cautiously, plasma rifles at the ready. Inside they found a treasure trove of advanced Prilorian technology. Sleek consoles hummed with residual power, and holographic displays flickered to life at their approach. But it was the data stored within the outpost's computers that truly caught their attention. "By the gods!" Altair breathed as he scanned the files. "This research, it contains detailed analyses of Vorax biology, their weaknesses." Philip leaned in, his eyes widening as he studied the data. "And look at this," he said, pointing to a complex molecular diagram. "This protein structure, it's similar to antibodies in the human immune system. If we could synthesize something like this, tailor it to target the Vorax, we could create a biological weapon," Altair finished, his mandibles clicking excitedly. "A way to fight back against their invasion." Energized by this new hope, Philip and Altair set to work. They pored over the research, using the outpost's advanced equipment to run simulations and synthesize prototype serums. Philip's expertise in human biology and Altair's knowledge of Prilorian technology proved a potent combination. But their efforts were interrupted by a sudden explosion that rocked the outpost. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed red. "Vorax," Altair snarled, checking the security feeds. "A scouting party. They must have tracked us here." Philip cursed, grabbing his rifle. "We have to protect the research. If they destroy this place—" Another explosion shook the room and the power flickered. Philip pulled up a schematic of the outpost, his eyes widening in alarm. "The power core. It's been hit. If it goes critical—" Altair gripped his shoulder. "Go, I'll hold them off." Philip nodded grimly and sprinted towards the core chamber. He could hear the sounds of battle erupting behind him, plasma fire and Vorax screeches echoing through the halls. The core chamber was a mess of sparking consoles and ruptured conduits. The containment field was flickering, the core itself pulsing with unstable energy. Philip worked frantically, rerouting power, bypassing damaged systems. His hands flew over the controls, sweat beading on his brow. The containment field stabilized, and Philip let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He glanced at the progress bar on the nearby console. The prototype serum was almost complete. Just a little longer. A Vorax screech sounded right outside the door, and Philip whirled, rifle raised. But it was Altair who stumbled through, his carapace cracked and leaking ichor. "They're dead," he rasped, "but more will come. We have to go now." Philip grabbed the vial of serum and nodded. They raced through the outpost, alarms still blaring, and emerged into the harsh Prilorian sunlight. In the distance, they could see more Vorax shapes approaching, their silhouettes shimmering in the heat haze. With the precious serum secure, Philip and Altair fled into the wilderness once more. But they were not running blindly. They had a plan now, a hope, and they would carry that hope to every corner of Priloria, rallying resistance against the Vorax threat. As they journeyed on, they came across other Prilorian settlements and outposts. Some were abandoned, their inhabitants fled or worse. Others were holding out, fighting back against the encroaching Vorax with whatever weapons and defenses they could muster. Philip and Altair shared their knowledge and their serum with those they encountered. They helped to fortify defenses, to train Prilorian warriors in the most effective ways to combat the Vorax. But they also learned that Prilorian politics were complex, the different factions and alliances not always united in the face of this existential threat. They navigated these treacherous waters as best they could, always keeping one eye on the horizon for signs of Vorax pursuit. They knew the road ahead would be long and perilous, but they also knew that they carried the hopes of two species, two worlds, on their shoulders. And they would not rest until the Vorax were defeated, and peace was restored to the galaxy. As Philip and Altair ventured deeper into Prilorian territory, they realized that securing the support of the military would be crucial to their cause. General Zaxxon, a legendary Prilorian warrior renowned for his strategic brilliance and influence, was their best hope for gaining the resources and backing they needed to combat the Vorax threat. To infiltrate the heavily guarded Prilorian military base where General Zaxxon was stationed, Philip and Altair crafted meticulous disguises. They studied Prilorian military uniforms, mannerisms and technology, using their knowledge to create convincing forgeries of identification documents and access codes. Dressed in the iridescent purple and black armor of Prilorian soldiers, Philip and Altair approached the base's main gate. The towering organic structure pulsed with energy, guarded by a phalanx of armed Prilorians. Philip's heart raced as he presented his forged ID to the scanner, praying that their disguises would hold up under scrutiny. The scanner beeped, and the gate slid open with a hiss. Philip and Altair marched inside, their postures rigid and their movements precise, mimicking the disciplined gait of Prilorian soldiers. They navigated a maze of corridors and checkpoints, relying on Altair's insider knowledge of military protocols and Philip's quick thinking to avoid detection. As they made their way deeper into the base, they overheard a group of soldiers discussing a secret project in hushed, urgent tones. "Operation Starhammer," one of them clicked, mandibles twitching. "The weapon is almost ready. We'll strike at the heart of the Vorax lair and end this war once and for all." Philip and Altair exchanged a worried glance. A secret weapon powerful enough to take out the Vorax? It sounded too good to be true. They needed to find out more. Ducking into an empty storage room, Philip hacked into a nearby terminal, using a decryption algorithm he'd learned from the abandoned outpost's data. His fingers flew over the holographic keys as he navigated through layers of security, searching for any information on Operation Starhammer. What he found made his blood run cold. Classified schematics and test reports revealed that the weapon was a massive orbital energy cannon designed to harness the power of Priloria's twin suns. But the weapon was unstable, its power core prone to catastrophic overloads. If fired, it could not only obliterate the Vorax lair but also devastate Priloria's ecosystem and civilian population. "We can't let them use this," Philip said, his voice tight with urgency. "We have to stop Operation Starhammer no matter what." Altair nodded grimly. "Agreed, but how? We're just two soldiers, and this is a military operation with support from the highest levels." Philip's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We have to sabotage it from within, plant a virus in the weapons control system, make it look like a malfunction. If we can disable it before it's launched, we can buy ourselves time to find another way to stop the Vorax." They set to work, Philip coding the virus while Altair kept watch, his rifle at the ready. The clock was ticking, the launch of Operation Starhammer drawing ever closer. Philip's fingers flew over the terminal, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Just as he hit the final keystroke, alarms blared throughout the base. "Intruder alert!" a voice boomed over the intercom. "All units converge on Sector 7. Philip and Altair burst out of the storage room, sprinting through the corridors, as Prilorian soldiers swarmed around them. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching the walls and floor. Philip ducked and weaved, his heart hammering in his chest. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of heavily armed Prilorians, their weapons trained on Philip and Altair. At their head was General Zaxxon himself, his carapace scarred and battle-worn, his compound eyes glinting with fierce intelligence. "Stand down, soldiers," Zaxxon clicked, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "You have committed treason against the Prilorian military. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Philip and Altair glanced at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They couldn't surrender, not with so much at stake. In a flash, they raised their weapons and opened fire, diving for cover as the Prilorians returned fire. The corridor erupted into chaos, plasma bolts and shattered chitin filling the air. Philip and Altair fought with desperate intensity, taking down soldier after soldier. But there were too many, and they were being pushed back, cornered. Just as all seemed lost, a deafening explosion rocked the base. The walls shuddered and cracked, the floor heaving beneath their feet. A voice crackled over the intercom, panicked and urgent. "Operation Starhammer is offline. The weapon is non-functional. The launch has been aborted." Philip and Altair locked eyes, a grim smile passing between them. The virus had worked. They had bought themselves time, at the cost of their own safety and freedom. But the fight against the Vorax was far from over, and now they had to face the consequences of their actions. General Zaxxon loomed over them, his rifle aimed squarely at their heads. "You may have stopped the weapon, but you won't stop the might of the Prilorian military. You will pay for your treachery, humans." As the soldiers closed in, Philip and Altair knew that their mission had only just begun. They were in the heart of the enemy now, with no allies and no escape. But they had each other, and they had the truth, and that would have to be enough to see them through the trials ahead. Sirens wailed and red lights flashed as Philip and Altair sprinted through the military base, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. They burst into a hangar bay, scanning the rows of sleek insectoid vehicles for an escape route. There! Altair pointed to a high-speed hover vehicle, its angular carapace gleaming under the harsh lights. They leaped into the cockpit, Philip's fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. The engine thrummed to life, anti-grav pads glowing as the vehicle lifted off the ground. Prilorian soldiers poured into the hangar, weapons blazing. Philip gunned the throttle, sending the hover vehicle rocketing forward, scattering their pursuers. They burst out of the hangar and into the alien landscape, the base's defenses opening fire behind them. Philip wove the speeding craft through a maze of jagged rock formations, the vehicle's agility, and his quick reflexes keeping them one step ahead of the enemy fire. Altair manned the rear-mounted plasma cannon, raking their pursuers with searing bolts of energy. "We need to find a place to lay low," Philip shouted over the roar of the engine. "Somewhere we can—" A blinking light on the comm panel caught his eye. An incoming transmission, on a frequency he didn't recognize. He glanced at Altair, who nodded warily. Philip opened the channel. A female voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in accented but clear English. "Philip Perry, Altair Zaxxon. My name is Zara, and I represent a group that has been monitoring your actions with great interest. We are the Prilorian Liberation Front, and we share your goal of stopping the Vorax threat." Philip and Altair exchanged a look of surprise. Zara continued, her voice urgent. "We know you have sabotaged Operation Starhammer, and we commend your bravery. But you must know that the corruption in our government runs deep. There are those who would aid the Vorax for their own gain." Philip's grip tightened on the controls. "What do you propose?" "Join us," Zara said. "We have resources, intelligence, and personnel that could be invaluable to your mission. Together, we can expose the traitors in our midst and bring the fight to the Vorax." Philip looked to Altair, who nodded grimly. They both knew they couldn't do this alone. They needed allies, and the Prilorian Liberation Front seemed to be offering just that. "We're in," Philip said. "Where do we meet?" "I'm sending coordinates now," Zara replied. "We'll be waiting. Welcome to the Resistance." The transmission cut out, and a set of coordinates blinked on the nav screen. Philip plugged them in, and the hover vehicle banked sharply, speeding off towards a new destination and an uncertain future. As they flew, Philip couldn't help but marvel at the turn his life had taken. From a soldier fighting for Earth to a fugitive on an alien world, allied with a rebel faction against a nightmarish foe. He glanced over at Altair, the Prilorian warrior who had become his closest friend and most trusted ally. There was a bond between them now, forged in the crucible of shared danger and purpose, a connection that went beyond mere camaraderie. In the quiet moments between battles and narrow escapes, Philip had begun to feel a stirring of something more. A warmth in his chest when Altair was near, a quickening of his pulse at the brush of the Prilorian's clawed hand against his own. The hover vehicle soared over a range of obsidian mountains, their jagged peaks shrouded in swirling mist. Beyond lay a vast, pitted plain, pockmarked with steaming vents and geysers of noxious gas. Altair consulted the nav screen, pointing to a particularly large geyser field. "There, the coordinates lead to that area." Philip nodded, angling the craft downward. As they descended, a hidden hatch irised open in the rocky ground, revealing a dimly lit tunnel. Philip guided the hover vehicle inside, the hatch spiraling shut behind them. They followed the tunnel down, the walls pressing close around them. Philip's heart hammered in his chest, his every instinct screaming that this could be a trap. But they had come too far to turn back now. The tunnel opened into a vast underground hangar, filled with dozens of Prilorian ships and vehicles. Rebels in mismatched armor and gear moved among them, carrying weapons and equipment. As Philip and Altair climbed out of their hover vehicle, a tall, lithe Prilorian female approached. Her carapace was a deep, iridescent blue, her compound eyes glinting with intelligence and purpose. "Philip Perry, Altair Zaxxon," she said, inclining her head. "I am Zara. Welcome to the heart of the Resistance." She led them through the bustling base, past rooms filled with humming computer banks, barracks packed with resting rebels, and armories bristling with advanced weaponry. Philip and Altair couldn't help but be impressed by the scale and sophistication of the operation. Zara brought them to a large circular chamber dominated by a holographic display of Priloria. Red markers pulsed on the map, clustered around a familiar area, the site of the Vorax lair. "We've been gathering intelligence on the Vorax's movements and defenses for months," Zara explained, manipulating the display. "We believe we've found a weakness, a hidden access tunnel that could allow a small strike team to infiltrate the lair." She turned to Philip, her gaze intense. "With your anti-Vorax serum, we could deal a crippling blow to their operation, but we need your help to make it happen." Philip stepped forward, studying the map. His mind raced with possibilities, strategies, the beginnings of a plan taking shape. "I'm in," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "Let's take the fight to the Vorax and end this once and for all." Altair placed a clawed hand on Philip's shoulder, a gesture of support and solidarity. "We're with you, Zara, to the end." Zara nodded, a fierce smile spreading across her insectoid features. "Then let us begin. We have a lair to infiltrate and a galaxy to save." As the rebels gathered around the display, Philip and Altair among them, a sense of purpose and determination filled the room. They were no longer just a ragtag group of fighters, but a united force, ready to take on the greatest threat their worlds had ever known. And in that moment, Philip knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers they would face, he would not face them alone. He had Altair by his side, and a cause worth fighting for. Together, they would stand against the darkness and light the way to a brighter future for all. The Prilorian rebels, led by Philip and Altair, gathered on the outskirts of the Vorax lair. The massive, pulsating structure loomed before them, its organic walls bristling with alien defenses. Philip checked his gear one last time, ensuring the charges were primed and the anti-Vorax serum was ready for deployment. Altair stood at his side, his plasma rifle humming with deadly energy. "This is it," he clicked, his compound eyes fixed on the lair. "The final battle." Philip nodded grimly. "We end this today, for Priloria, for Earth, for every world the Vorax threaten." Zara stepped forward, her carapace gleaming in the harsh light of Priloria's twin suns. "Rebels, you know your roles. Philip will lead the strike team into the heart of the lair. Altair and I will coordinate the assault from out here, providing cover fire and support. This won't be easy, but together we can do this." The rebels chittered their assent, their weapons at the ready. Philip turned to his strike team, a mix of battle-hardened Prilorians and a few brave human survivors they had rescued along the way. "Stay sharp in there," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Watch each other's backs, and don't let up until that serum is dispersed and those charges are set." With a final nod to Altair and Zara, Philip led his team towards the lair's entrance. They moved swiftly and silently, darting from cover to cover as they approached the massive, pulsating door. The moment they breached the entrance, all hell broke loose. Vorax drones poured out from every crevice, their claws and fangs flashing in the dim, bioluminescent light. Philip and his team opened fire, plasma bolts and serum-laced rounds tearing through the chitinous horde. They pushed deeper into the lair, the walls shuddering with the force of the rebel assault outside. Philip planted charges as they went, the explosives adhering to the fleshy, organic surfaces with sickening squelches. The strike team fought their way into a vast, cavernous chamber, the heart of the Vorax lair. And there, rising from a seething mass of drones and pulsating tendrils, was the Vorax Queen herself. She towered over them, her monstrous form swollen with stolen biomass and pulsing with malevolent energy. Her psychic scream tore at their minds, driving some of the rebels to their knees in agony. But Philip stood firm, the serum injector clutched in his hand. He charged forward, dodging slashing claws and whipping tendrils, his eyes fixed on the Queen's bulbous, pulsating head. The Queen's psychic onslaught intensified, and Philip felt his mind beginning to fray at the edges. But he pushed through the pain, drawing on every ounce of his strength and determination. With a final desperate lunge, he plunged the injector into the Queen's flesh, depressing the trigger. The concentrated serum surged into her body and she convulsed violently, her psychic scream rising to a deafening crescendo. And then, with a sickening wet explosion, the Queen burst apart, showering the chamber in viscous green ichor. The remaining drones collapsed, their hive mind severed, and the lair began to shake and crumble around them. The strike team raced back through the collapsing tunnels, the charges detonating behind them. In a chain of shattering explosions, they burst out of the lair just as it imploded, the ground heaving beneath their feet. Philip staggered, his vision swimming, and felt Altair's strong arms catching him. The Prilorian warrior was battered and bleeding, his carapace cracked in a dozen places, but his eyes shone with triumph. Around them, the surviving rebels let out ragged cheers, their voices rising above the roar of the collapsing lair. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck a decisive blow against the Vorax and their Prilorian collaborators. But even as they celebrated, Philip knew that their work was far from over. The Prilorian government was in chaos, the extent of their complicity with the Vorax laid bare for all to see. There would be trials, purges, a long and painful process of rebuilding and reconciliation. And for Philip and Altair a new path lay ahead. The stars called to them, a vast and infinite frontier waiting to be explored. There were other humans out there, lost and stranded, waiting to be found and brought home. Altair nodded, his clawed hand resting on Philip's shoulder. "Together," he clicked, his voice filled with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. "No matter where the stars take us, we face it together." They stood there for a long moment, the weight of their shared trials and triumphs hanging in the air between them, and then, as one, they turned their faces to the sky, ready to embrace the endless possibilities of the universe beyond. Days later, Philip and Altair stood before the Provisional Council, the newly formed government of Priloria. Zara, now a key leader in the rebuilding effort, offered them positions of power and influence, a chance to shape the future of the planet they had fought so hard to save. But Philip and Altair knew that their path lay elsewhere. The stars called to them, a siren song of adventure and discovery that they could not ignore. "We're honored," Philip said, his voice steady and clear. "But we have a different mission now. There are other humans out there scattered across the galaxy. We need to find them, bring them home." Zara nodded, her compound eyes glinting with understanding. "Then go with our blessing," she clicked, "and know that Priloria will always be here to aid you in your quest." The council chamber erupted in a chorus of chittering approval, the Prilorians stamping their clawed feet in a gesture of respect and gratitude. Philip and Altair bowed their heads, humbled by the outpouring of support. Later, as they prepared their ship for departure, Philip found himself staring out at the Prilorian skyline, the spires of the rebuilt city gleaming in the sunlight. Altair stepped up beside him, his presence a solid, comforting warmth at Philip's side. "Are you ready for this?" Philip asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leaving your home, your people, to follow me into the unknown?" Altair turned to him, his compound eyes shining with a fierce, unwavering devotion. "My place is at your side," he clicked softly. "Wherever you go, whatever challenges we face, I will be there with you. Always." Philip felt a lump form in his throat, his heart swelling with a love and gratitude he could scarcely put into words. He reached out, his hand finding Altair's, their fingers intertwining in a silent promise. Together they boarded their ship, the sleek vessel humming with power and potential. As they strapped in, Philip felt a thrill of excitement and trepidation course through his veins. The unknown stretched out before them, vast and infinite, filled with dangers and wonders he could scarcely imagine. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.